Cher, the eternally living goddess of new ideas, the music star who has been around for nearly 70 years and isn't going anywhere. From being a young girl abandoned in an orphanage with ripped shoes kept together with rubber bands, she now runs a company valued at over $360 million. She has been the most resilient person in her field. She defied time and transformed illness into a legacy, pain into history, and poverty into platinum. For the first time, as she sang, "I Got You, Babe," everyone believed. Believe, a song, has inspired everyone to believe in everything. Her salary is enormous. Globally, more than 100 million recordings have been sold. Her tours set records, and her long-running Las Vegas performance brought in over 250 million. But they also caused her knees to swell so much that she needed backstage injections to continue. She owns a tens of millions of dollar Italian Renaissance-style home in Malibu, perched high above the Pacific, with cold marble floors, enormous bronze doors, and windows that open to endless ocean views. She is reminded of a life that never gave up by every sunset there. Beverly Hills is home to more multi-million-dollar residences. Each one resembled a page engraved in her new life's book. She keeps a fleet of high-end vehicles in her garage. In the lights were gleaming Rolls-Royces. The sound of a Porsche 911 roaring like an unstoppable heartbeat. A Cadillac Escalade that subtly transports both joy and sorrow across the ages. However, this is not a financial story. That has to do with the price, because there is a scar on every dollar in that empire. Every home and vehicle serves as a silent reminder of the moments she stood on stage with trembling legs. Despite the severe pain in her chest from being ill, she sung every note. On some evenings, she passed out backstage, her clothes glittering solely to cover up her injuries, behind the beautiful pyrotechnics. She fought her body and strained for air throughout the long, silent hours before the cheers, determined not to disappoint her group. Her family does not view the enormous legacy she left behind as a benefit. They believe it to be the woman, a mother who sacrificed everything to express her affection, a musician who gives their all to each song, a real individual who consistently made the decision to get back up after falling numerous times. Please write a tribute below if her songs were a source of comfort during difficult times. We would like to express our gratitude in silence for being the voice that kept us upright when we were unable to do it on our own. Cher's first recollections were not of gentle embraces or lullabies. Rather, they were of the solitude of cold evenings, the weight of poverty against her ribs, and the worry that she would never belong anywhere or to anybody. Her world was already fractured in many ways when she was born in El Centro, California, on May 20th, 1946. Her mother, Georgia Holt, had a dreamy heart and sang, but she had to work at a Fresno donut store to support herself. Her father, John Sarkisian, was a charming but unrooted Armenian-American truck driver who vanished almost as soon as he appeared. Before Cher could say a word, their hurried marriage broke down, leaving her with fragments of her family rather than a complete one. An unstable youth, a father who became a ghost, and another name that was lost. 7 men, some of whom Georgia married twice, turned her life into a desperate roller coaster. Each man's broken pledges destroyed her heart. Cher wasn't the only kid in those crazy years. Her older half-sister was Jorgani. Although their father was not connected to them, their mother was. They were compelled to witness their mother's quest for security together. However, it never materialized. When Cher was just 2 years old, Georgia abandoned her at a Catholic home. No youngster should have to endure that depressing period of time. It was essential, not cruel. It's still a terrifying image. As her mother left, a toddler with big, inquisitive eyes gripped the hands of strangers. Her life resembled a film with many gloomy moments. She alternated between the modest home where her grandparents lived, quarters she rented that had a dusty odor, and shelters where she had nothing of her own. She recalled the frigid air seeping through the wall openings and being squashed under thin blankets at night. She also recalled the embarrassment of wearing garments that were so ripped that they caused conversation among classmates. In order to get through the day, she once repaired her broken shoes by wrapping rubber bands around their bottoms. Her life was jarring and bordering on cruel. After surviving on canned beans for a week, she briefly visited her mother in Beverly Hills to watch her hunt for a job with yet another husband. These distinctions did not astound. They made it difficult for her to discover her identity. She was not only impoverished, but also invisible. Due to her undiagnosed learning disability and dyslexia, she was perceived as sluggish in school. Because she remained silent, teachers assumed she was acting defiantly. Charges were created using the report cards Cher was already envisioning lights and sparkles, while the other girls were thinking about costumes and dancing. She reflected on how she would no longer be the unwanted child and would instead become an unavoidable presence on stage. By the time she was 16, her urge to flee outweighed her embarrassment. She packed a tiny suitcase with only clothes and unfulfilled dreams, left school, and rode a bus to Los Angeles. There were many unfulfilled promises in the city in the early 1960s, but Sonny Bono was the only one that appeared to be a shaky thread. He allowed her to sleep on his couch when she had nowhere else to go, even though he wasn't yet her boyfriend. What began as a time-saving strategy evolved into a means of survival, a collaboration, and ultimately a force that outperformed the odds. The first song that everyone heard was I Got You Babe, which they performed together in 1965. The artist's fame was not the only thing the song accomplished. It dragged Cher into the light and out of the black abyss of forgetting. However, notoriety is fleeting. They lost the spotlight, their films failed, and their early hits didn't perform as well. They had to relocate to smoky Las Vegas venues where sequins sparkled under cheap, bright lights in order to survive. Cher sung every night to stay alive, not to attract attention. Her words conveyed the agony of a youngster abandoned in an institution, the anxiety of shoes breaking, and the constant need for security. Though nobody in the audience realized it, every note served as a foundation for the kingdom she would eventually create. It was a kingdom of hurt, rejection, and a yearning so intense that it could only be sated by creating a life that no one could take away, not one based on riches and power. Cher, who was barely 20 at the time, and Sonny had to confront a hard reality when their names were removed from the charts in the late 1960s. They had little money, little time, and little speed remaining. It felt like fate, but now it was about to go awry. They transformed their lives and became a bar act in Las Vegas out of necessity, rather than desire for fame. The new idea wasn't very good. Life was a tenuous thread. They rebuilt it from scratch under smoky stage lights, surrounded by the stench of sour beverages and the weight of their own diminishing fame. Entertainment, but no longer at the top of the charts. They made money with their incisive humor, quick wit, and unmistakable chemistry. Cher was positioned in the center. Her sardonic humor broke through the mist. Even a spotlight couldn't take away from her electrifying performance. In a strange manner, rebirth resulted from that sadness. Millions of homes watched the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour when it debuted on television in 1971. Those who went had a glittering rebirth. Cher, who was only 25, interpreted it as evidence that occasionally surviving could be mistaken for winning. Their world was collapsing as they laughed. Family ties, not love, kept an already fragile marriage intact. They grinned for the cameras as their house was silent. Cher would subsequently claim that she couldn't pretend to be happy when her heart was exploding on the inside. Even Sonny acknowledged in a 1973 covert journal that their love facade was the only thing holding their empire together. That glue was gone by 1974. In 1975, Cher filed for divorce, ending their marriage and their collaboration. What followed was awful. Cher had trusted Sonny with their money and her heart, yet she left him nearly broke. At the age of 29, she mourned the loss of her first great love as she plunged into financial despair. Her name was all that was left of her. The fire, the voice, and the face had all been hers. It was a horrible turn of events, yet she refused to leave. With just the name Cher and a lot of bravery, she launched her own program in 1975. In the company, there were suspicions that she wouldn't succeed without Sonny. She prevailed in the end. The sequins were gleaming, a roar of laughter. The show was a success. She was never just someone's half, and she made that obvious. The tragic demise of their once uniform renown was symbolized by Sonny's independent endeavor, which failed after just one season. However, the path ahead was difficult. She recorded 3 extremely quiet songs: Stars in 1975, I'd Rather Be You in 1976, and Cherished in 1977. Suddenly, the voice that had previously enthralled millions of people looked unwelcome. Her time had come and gone, according to some. Another storm arrived after love and labor were destroyed. Then she met Greg Allman, a legendary rock star from the South who struggles with his own issues. 3 days after her divorce, Cher married him in June 1975. It was like taking a chance on hope. His practices led to the dissolution of the marriage within 9 days. Her desire to take control and start again conflicted with his disarray. But she stayed. She dropped it. They reconciled. They got into an altercation. After being ripped apart, they attempted to reconstruct their lives. Greg filed for divorce when Cher and Sonny briefly reconciled in 1976, but destiny had other ideas. That summer, Cher discovered she was expecting a child. When their son, Elijah Blue, was born in July 1976, he became the linchpin of their relationship. However, even a youngster was unable to stop the reign. By 1978, the marriage had ended permanently. Cher would not discuss that period of time much years later because it was too painful for her to do so. It was whispered by her. It was difficult and profound. She had experienced 2 divorces, the collapse of her corporate empire, and an embarrassingly near bankruptcy by the time she was 32. She didn't give up, though. Through every betrayal, silence, and fall, she transformed her grief into strength by carrying it like armor. She was not believed by anyone. Cher rose again because she always does, even when many didn't believe in her. Transform her injuries into tools, her abandonment into motivation, and her grief into the foundation of a life that no one can ever take away. Rock anthems rocked arenas and disco glitter dominated the charts in the late 1970s. Cher, just over 30, was once again on the verge of being erased. Now, the vicious mockery was directed at the girl who used to tape rubber bands around her shoes to hide the holes in them. Her voice, which had carried her from an orphanage to international stages, was fading. The corporate landscape had evolved. The radio no longer played her music. She was a well-known individual who brought in no money. She gazed into the depths of forgetfulness. But Cher was never supposed to give up. Her survival was aided by the abilities she had acquired as a child. She took chances. When she joined with Casablanca Records in 1978, she entered a world where bass lines and mirror balls were the norm. Cher's spirit still yearned for the gritty nature of rock, so it was more than simply music. There was a deal. It was risky. It was a fresh beginning adorned with sequins. Take Me Home was born out of that danger in 1979. Sensual Revolt shines in the title track. More than 500,000 copies were sold in the US alone, making it an official gold record. Hundreds of thousands of dollars as a means of escape when her bank accounts were nearly empty. Beneath the glitz, a lady was attempting to regain her reputation by turning her scars into a performance and demonstrating to the world that she had never truly departed. The hungry toddler remained behind the lights while people resumed their dancing. She then battled to demonstrate her indestructibility. Later that year, she took a bolder chance with Prisoner, attempting to fuse her own honest voice with the ferocity of disco. The commercial world, however, was harsh. Because it was torn between business and truth, the record broke. Sales fell precipitously as a result of people laughing at Cher. Once again, she had to taste the bitter taste of defeat. But she refused to give up. By 1980, she had shed all of her sequins and costumes and formed Black Rose, a rock band with guitarist Les Dudek. For the first time in decades, she wasn't Cher the brand. Cher and her bandmates stood side by side in sweaty clubs, seeking authenticity more than accolades. However, bad luck struck once more. There was no name for the record or indication that it was a hit. It was not seen by fans. Radio didn't respond. The relationship ended quietly in 1982. The band disbanded, and the music ceased. She had lost another source of income, and this marked the end of yet another makeover. Most people would have stopped there. It wasn't Cher. Because she was perceived as being stuck in the past, she chose the scariest road at the age of 36. She started over. Acting was not vanity. I needed to survive. She transformed into Dolly Pelican in Silkwood in 1983, a reserved, wounded lady who lives on the periphery of society. There was no glitter or feathers, just the truth. At the box office, the film earned over $35 million. She received a Golden Globe for the part and received her first Oscar nomination. All of a sudden, businesses began printing checks bearing her name once more. For the first time in years, honor and money were coming together. She then landed 6-figure roles in Mask, 1985, The Witches of Eastwick, 1987, and Suspect, 1987, all of which boosted her bank account and artistic profile. Moonstruck was released in 1987 after that. Cher looked stunning at 41 as Loretta Castorini. She was ordinary but memorable, strong but weak. That was discovery, not performance. The film became a great hit for its time, earning about $100 million worldwide. Cher became a bankable celebrity as a result, earning millions of dollars through contracts and sponsorships. Her 1988 Academy Award triumph for Best Actress wasn't the only accolade she received. It was resentment of everyone who had denigrated her. Every stage where she had to sing to survive. Every lie that crushed her heart. That gold statue was more than just a reward. It played a crucial role. Evidence that every injury and every fall had been transformed into fuel and weaponry. Not only had Cher returned, she had ascended as well. By rising, she established the groundwork for her kingdom, which was based on heartbreak, hunger, and a will to survive. Brick by brick, check after check, it would keep growing until it had as much money as the fire that had saved her life. Everyone believed Cher would finally be able to rest in peace after she won the Oscar in 1988. She realized what the cameras had missed, though as the applause subsided and the statue of gold on her shelf remained motionless. Honors and awards don't guarantee a better day or cover the expenses. At 42, she was once more on the brink of doubt. She feared that her most joyful experience would merely be a fleeting memory. Notoriety is cruel. Every victory seems to bolster doubts. Cher returned to music in 1989, carrying a burden no prize could ease. She needed to demonstrate her continued value as a listener. Her obstinate response was heart of stone. She received millions of dollars in fees from the more than 4 million copies that were sold worldwide. Before it became a survival hymn, If I Could Turn Back Time became so popular that MTV banned the leather-clad music video. For the first time, she was able to invest her earnings in a stable investment, a Malibu beachfront home. She was able to decompress from the fatigue that was consuming her body by listening to the sound of the waves breaking. She looked stunning in front of the cameras. However, she kept the fact that, in private, she feared losing every concert because it was like a battle with time. It was a terrible start to the 1990s. Charts did not heat up, albums did not sell well, and record executives started to consider younger artists. By 1996, the whispers were hardly audible. Cher has finished her work. Contracts, legal action, and the ongoing expenses of maintaining her hero status cost her the millions of dollars she had earned. The Malibu home was an emblem of prosperity. However, she secretly feared being wiped once more. Then came her final opportunity in 1998. When she released Believe at the age of 52, most people assumed her career was over. Some referred to it as desperation, yet it spread over the globe. With over $100 million in sales and 11 million records sold, Auto-Tune transformed the musical landscape and became a part of pop history. Cher revolutionized an era in addition to saving her career. The cost was absurdly exorbitant, though. During the 1999 Do You Believe tour, according to her friends, she fainted backstage. IV infusions were the only thing that kept her going when her body pleaded with her to take a break. At other instances, bruises were obscured by sequins that were invisible even in high light. Nevertheless, the tour earned over $100 million because to those sold-out stadium nights, it was a concert for the fans. For Cher, it appeared to be success and a means of survival. Tired and afraid of losing the wonder she had worked so hard to regain, she spent every dollar. Then came the farewell tour in 2002, which continued until 2005, even though it was meant to be the last. It made about $250 million at the time, making it one of the most lucrative shows ever. Every night, ovations sounded like avalanches, and stadiums were illuminated by pyrotechnics. Her knees were so large every morning that she needed to undergo shots merely to get to her feet. Her joints burned and her back ached. Fans noticed that her clothes seemed to be dazzling with diamonds. Her skin had purple markings on it. Nevertheless, she continued to sing since her success in selling tickets and conquering cities wasn't in vain. It was survival that led to prosperity. By the time Cher walked off that last stage, she had accomplished more than merely entertaining. She transformed pain into wealth, heartbreak into history, and wounds into the foundation of a kingdom. Although her fortune was reported to have gleamed in the new century, each dollar was acquired through quiet, sweat, and blood. Despite her fame, she never became wealthy. Piece by piece, it was wrenched from the jaws of despair. Behind the glamour of her headline-grabbing performances and her notoriety, Cher had a darker side to her existence, one that could never be added up with a calculator. Every dollar she spent was burdened by a debt that was silently and painfully inscribed. Because years ago, when people were beginning to care about Cher, her body had turned against her. During the filming of The Witches of Eastwick in 1987, the first fractures appeared. She was so exhausted that her bones felt like lead. She convinced herself that was it. The cost of want, and the penalty for having the courage to crave more, was simply being exhausted. The whispers inside her, however, had become shouts by the early 1990s. A persistent virus began to make her feel hollow inside. Her confidence, strength, and air were all taken away. Later, I developed pneumonia, which made breathing extremely difficult and made me feel as though I was slowly drowning. Previously famed for her fortitude, the woman now found it difficult to climb stairs. She used to practice at night and work on lines, but now she just gazed at the ceiling while battling waves of fever that left her trembling and wet. Her voice, which had brought her from poverty to a castle, was too feeble and was trembling. She canceled appointments that she had previously worked so hard to obtain. Before the contracts were even signed, she witnessed the termination of million-dollar jobs. She was never even given the opportunity to try out for tours that would have made her a fortune. She was disappointed by every no she received, but she was also terrified that her financial issues would resurface like a plague. And behind locked doors that no one would ever see, tears were poured. The harsh deprivation of her most fundamental liberties, the ability to breathe painlessly, move without falling, and sing without fear, was what brought her to tears, not the applause. In the middle of a note, her voice would shatter. She was still sparkles, and remained alive to everyone else. Only the number of steps she took, the number of breaths she took, and the unsettling question of whether she would ever be fit enough to work again could be used to tally the days when she was by herself. But worse was what she didn't say. Years later, she recalled, almost painfully gently, "I was really, really upset about it." That she had spent her entire life trying to be recognized as more than half of a pair, a novelty act or a joke. She was recognized in Hollywood for her perseverance and hard work, and as she got to the top, an unidentified foe grabbed everything away from her and pulled her back into silence. The cruelty was too great for a title. She was at the peak of her career, and the reason she remained silent was not scandal or failure, but rather her body failing her. There was more to losing a job than simply not getting paid. Another fragment of her dominion was slipping away. Another reminder that time doesn't wait for anyone was being cooped up inside all day. Even less so for a 40-something woman attempting to remain relevant in a field that prioritizes youth. There was more to the melancholy than business. For Cher, it was everything. They were afraid of more than just losing their fame. It was the worry that everything she had worked for would be destroyed by her body, leaving her with just pictures of stages she was unable to walk on. Then another strike came, one that could not be protected or softened by money, attention, or fresh ideas. January 5th, 1998, with Colorado's Aspen. A phone call came first, followed by a pause, and then words that shattered everything. Sonny Bono was her first love, both in real life and in fiction. He was no longer alive. His body was left broken on a high hill, as the harsh hand of chance instantly claimed his life. The news reports caught up like wildfire. The entire planet gasped as if it had been struck by thunder. But that wasn't noise to Cher. Her spirit was torn apart like an earthquake. This was more than a man's demise. It was the removal of the one who had before increased her visibility. The idealist who had placed all of his faith in a terrified teenager who had no place to go, no self-worth, and poor teeth. Without Sonny, Cher might never have been born. She boarded a jet from London in a matter of hours. Her mind was disintegrating with each step, even if her body was there. The sound of the motors shattered the silence in her chest. She pressed her face against the window, but the limitless sky did not cheer her up. Every hour seemed to be a countdown to confronting an unchangeable truth, rather than a countdown to arriving there. She was empty on the inside when she arrived in Los Angeles. Sadness was growing in the quieter areas of her existence, and each stride felt heavier than the last. At Sonny's burial, she wasn't the Cher that everyone believed her to be, not the person who has experienced bankruptcy, a failed marriage, 1,000 previous lives, or the queen decked out in rhinestones. She was a distraught woman with no show on when she arrived. There was a thick hush that seemed to compress the air itself as she took the stage. She didn't practice her speech. Her voice shattered like glass as she discussed the past, and it was honest and trembling. All of the falsehoods, rage, and legal disputes that nearly ended their relationship were not documented by her. Rather, she made the decision to uncover the truth that lay behind everything. "Thank you." She sobbed as she depicted Sonny, neither as the well-known singer everyone knew, nor as the politician he had become into. Rather, she portrayed him as the naive idealist who had gazed upon her when she was unknown, clumsy, and afraid, and who saw not who she was, but what she had the potential to become. Her voice broke but remained firm as she told him, "Without him, I would not be here." Her words were honest. The harmonies of their songs, the laughter from their jokes, and the applause of their followers all vanished at that silent moment, leaving only humanity, love, and respect. Some later claimed that as she talked, the room seemed to cease breathing, as though time had halted to honor the connection. Anger, distance, and divorce had never truly disappeared, and there was no more battle, no disturbance, no news report after his body was dropped into the earth. He had constructed a foundation for her and permanently sewed it into her. That day, he left her with the burden of his absence, as well as the permanent mark of his trust. Cher was created by Sunny. Now that she was hurting from losing him, she reminded everyone that love endures even after a person passes away, and that this is more significant than fame, wealth, or anything else.